Hello, everyone. I am thrilled today to have Azurée with us, a dear friend. And gosh, she's got tremendous credentials. So I'm going to let her introduce herself and then we'll dive right in. Welcome, my friend.
Thank you so much, Bobby. It's so nice to be here and so nice to be with you. Hi, everyone. I'm Azurée Montoute-Lewis. I'm the Global Chief People Officer for Burson. We are a global communications agency. We have over 70 offices around 40 countries around the world, which is very global. We have a global footprint, which is fantastic. And I've been in this seat for the last 2 years as a part of Burson, which was newly merged between Hill and Knowlton and Burson Conan Wolf. And it's been an amazing journey for us over these last 2 years. So, really, thank you, Bobby, for inviting me today.
Oh, my honor. And I'm so thrilled to learn from you and have your wisdom shared with the world. I think your vantage point is just amazing. I mean, that global reach and,
Yeah.
serving clients globally with Fortune 50, 100 clients, phenomenal. So yeah, you're welcome to bring in any aspect that you like in terms of what you've learned so we can really make this a rich conversation. So let's start out, my friend. How do you define respect in the workplace?
So it's interesting, so much of what I do in the workplace is really about creating culture, right? Creating culture, creating community, and ensuring that people are able to express themselves, to bring their full selves, all their best attributes of their professional selves, for them to live our values. So when I think about respect in the workplace, is really that feeling and ability to know that you are a part of a greater good. You have contributions to make. You are encouraged, engaged, and invited in. You are treated as someone who has value inherently as a human being. I like to believe, and in order to do this work as a chief people officer, you have to believe in the potential of people. So, really encouraging people to see people as having intrinsic value, that they have talents that we all can benefit from, and inviting them into that place. I think when you think about respect, people think about the bare minimum of being open and kind and just what I would call is just general business etiquette, right? Which I think is the lowest level of respect. When I think about respect, is really that my treatment of you is intentional because I believe in your value intrinsically as a human being. And so that's what when I think about respect, that's what I try to drive within Burson as a part of our culture, as a part of our values, and really carry that forward amongst my team members to the rest of the world.
So powerful. You know, what I'm hearing in it is just your definition is very actionable and it's very action oriented versus the passive that you're
Hmm.
describing. And by the way, do have a we all have quadrant maps. So there it is, right? The
Yes.
intersection of action and humanity. So yeah, that's
Yes.
what you nailed. I love it. I love it. So Azure, how do you know when it's present in a work culture? And again, feel free to talk about different stakeholders that you
Yeah.
interact with because there's so many in your world.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I think of it both from a quantitative perspective, but also a qualitative perspective. And some of these things are going to be lagging indicators, right? So I'll be able to know whether it's here or not based upon the outcomes that we're driving, right? So, from an example, from a quantitative perspective, when I know that there's respect in the workplace, I'll see it in my employee engagement surveys, right? We have our employees actually say to us, do they feel respected at work? Do they feel as though they are valued? Do you feel that their voices are heard? Do they feel that they are welcome, that they're in an environment that they can contribute to, right? So we have all these quantitative surveys and engagement. We see it in our performance management processes about how people describe their relationship with their managers and their teams, and that feeling, right? We have quantitative data. We can say that 75% of our employee workforce feels engaged at work. 90% feel that they are respected at work, right? I mean, world class numbers and figures on that level. And so there's the quantitative piece, right? When I think about the qualitative, right, I think about the testimonials that I receive on a daily basis. So we launched a global mentoring program now in its second year. We have over 700 of our employees participating in this program, and the testimonials about the impact, about the connections. When you talk about the global footprint, we were very intentional about having employees in one region and another region in completely different functions, completely different markets, different roles and responsibilities come together to get to know each other, to support each other, to mentor each other. And the testimonials that I get from employees about how impactful our culture is, how impactful our programs are, that they feel respected, they feel engaged, they feel empowered. And a lot of our employee experience initiatives really drive that point home, right? So I know both quantitatively and qualitatively that respect exists in the workplace. On the dark side of this, right, I also manage our complaint systems, right? So I understand when employees actually raise flags and say, I feel that I wasn't treated fairly, or I feel as though this is not being done appropriately to process and what's going on, right? So on the more negative side, I can also track it that way and see where we're going. But I think on more positively, I see it through the systems and the processes that we put in place. I see it as an outcome of the programs and employee experience initiatives that we launch. And then also we see it in the other side. If people are not feeling good and they're using our available sources to highlight some of those experiences, then we know then as well.
Yeah, I love it. You know, my first career was market research. So
Uh-huh.
data is so critical, and I love how you've broken down the quantitative and qualitative.
Hmm.
You really need both, and the qualitative just adds more flavor and gives richness to the
Yes,
data. So it's great that you do that. Talk a bit more before we move on to when
sure.
it's not there about global differences, since,
Mhm.
I think we're so privileged to have you today with literally a footprint in just about every part of the world.
Yes.
What are some things that show up in terms of distinction and how
Yeah.
to navigate and especially coach and support your executives in these different subsidiaries or offices?
Yeah, absolutely. As you move around the world, there are different, I would say, cultural nuances that you have to be aware of and conscious of. I think as you move around the world, hierarchy, which also leads into respect and how we respect our leaders, is very different around the world. I see my APAC colleagues are very hierarchical, very concerned about levels and status, and they confer a certain amount of respect to leaders in those markets, right? And so as a result, a lot of the things that we do based on processes, both in initiatives and just other new activities that we engage in, we keep that kind of difference in mind. As I move around the world into the US, when we were seeing a lot of generational differences play out in the workplace, right, where everyone feels almost as equally empowered as from our junior staff, our junior AAEs, our assistant account executives, to our EVPs who are running portfolios of millions of dollars of business and how they feel respect should be given regardless of position or influence in the organization, right? So, and that's a very Western, if you will, kind of idea and perspective. And so really around the world, as we navigate different cultures and different environments and frankly certain expectations of a workplace and a corporate environment, we have to be careful of those nuances and we cater to them appropriately. Again, there are still going to be what I call core consistent themes amongst what I would call like the minimum threshold of what respect is and what belonging and engagement feels like. But I think even how it manifests itself in some cases is slightly different. But really, our goal for Burson Group holistically is that all of our employees feel respected. All of them feel they have opportunities to grow and develop, and just how that gets implemented, if you will, is what really changes around the world, just based upon cultural expectations and cultural differences.
Yeah, excellent. Let's go a little deeper with that, Azurée.
Sure.
I think my days at Microsoft were always guilty of sort of the intention was always
Uh-huh.
strategies are global, and
Yes.
then we coined the term, glocal that a lot of
Oh,
companies
yes.
use, right?
Yes.
What's your journey with that? And do you have an example of when you've let a local area really lead and kind of
Mhm.
truly take ownership of
Yeah.
how they navigated culture in
Yeah.
their area?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big believer that everything that we put together globally in terms of strategy, in terms of what the direction that we're setting for Burson overall. Like we were just completing our 3-year plan as an example, and really putting some significant stakes in the ground of what it means for us to own reputation for our clients, like how we drive value and what that carries forward. So that is absolutely the North Star for our entire agency. However, as I move around the world, right, my America's business is going to carry it out slightly different than my EMEA business, which is different from my APAC business, but ultimately it's all laddering up to that North Star. So it might have been globally mandated as a part of our strategy, but is definitely locally implemented and executed. One of my favorite examples when it comes to like respect and culture came out of my LATAM business. My LATAM business last year, or maybe even a year or two ago, had a program called Move Your Soul, right? So when they were thinking about how they could embed culture, a culture of wellness and well-being and support and collaboration, and frankly, some friendly competition amongst colleagues, we allowed them to create that employee experience that really was meaningful to them and kind of where they were seeing trends and where they were seeing feedback from their employees. And it's something that was so successful in that region, in our LATAM region, that we wanted to scale it out globally as an example. Another good example is kind of our focus on volunteerism. I think when you think about Burson as a company and an organization, we all feel very strongly about giving back to the communities and the places in which we work, in which we find ourselves with our clients. And so as Burson is celebrating its second birthday, we're really putting some stakes in the ground about how we can actually go out into the market and complete volunteerism activities and really get into the market to demonstrate that we are, for lack of a better word, a really good corporate citizen. And we want to make sure that wherever we are working, wherever we're doing business, we're having a positive impact. And that's something we're planning colloquially as a part of what we call season 2 for Burson. This is our second year of existence and what we're building. But when I think about, that being like a global like expectation about really being connected to the communities that we serve, how that's going to show up around the world will have a lot to do with the social economic environment, the political environment in which we find ourselves, and they will have to adapt that based upon where they are in the world. But I think at its core, as in terms of Burson's core, I think that's something that's going to be very important to us that we'll see carry through throughout the world.
Fantastic. Congratulations
Oh,
on
yeah.
really, I
Thank
mean,
you.
it's a new life. I mean, 2 years
Yeah.
is just a baby, right?
We are
So,
baby. We are baby. I mean, if I think about it, one of our agencies had just prepared to celebrate its 100-year anniversary. Had been around for so long and had taken so many different pivots and transformations in that time. And then the BCW side of our business, that was the Hill and Knowlton side. The BCW side of our business was founded by one of the fathers of PR, the public relations industry that we know. And so there's a lot of heritage. There's a lot of iconic people attached to this and really the history that comes from both these firms. So while Burson, as in its existence, is really now 2 years old, is really standing on the foundation of what these two agencies stood for in the years prior. So it's been really exciting to create this really magical third thing. As a part of what Burson is going to be when it grows up. But it definitely has two parents that were really engaged and involved in our industry and have a legacy that they're trying to carry forward. So we're really excited about what we're building.
I love it. Another question that I don't typically ask just came to mind, generational differences. So
Yeah.
again, you're facing that at the volume that you have with
Hmm.
such a major global footprint.
Yes.
How are you navigating that regarding respect and
Yeah, it's interesting. There's so many articles right now talking about Gen Z, and my littlest one is Gen Alpha, right? My kids are technically, I think, Gen Alpha kids, and they're not ready for the workforce, but they'll be there before we know it. And they always talk about how, there's always these thought pieces about Gen Z not being as communicative, not being as employable, because now they rely so much on technology, whereas millennials, which my generation technically, and compared to Gen X, who kind of like were on the cusp between, the old school ways. Like I remember using a typewriter and a word processor and a rotary phone. And now, and my kids are like, we were flipping through something, and my son said, "What is that?" It's like, "That's a phone book." He had no idea that there used to be a book that was printed that had phone numbers so you could look people up and call them. I mean, it's definitely a very different situation. But as generations come through, they have different political events, external events that kind of mark their history. And by default, they come to the workplace with different expectations. So when I started working now about 25 plus years ago to now Gen Z employees, my junior staff coming in, they don't have the same, they have very different and I would say increased expectations of their employers for what expect looks like. They expect a significant amount of transparency. They expect to be empowered. They expect to have opportunities for growth and advancement almost immediately on day one. They are coming in self assured. They are capable. They are ready to hit the ground running. Now, back when we were being assimilated, if you will, into organizations, we learned to pay our dues. We learned to sit and wait, to be tapped on the shoulder, to work hard, keep your nose down, and you will continue to grow and you would experience growth and advancement as a result. And the different approaches are very, very different, right? And you see it even in the policy now. So, like, return to office is something that this generation feels very strongly about. They work anywhere, anytime, from any location, and they expect that flexibility because they're like, we can do it. We've done it. We can do it. And most of the Gen Xers and even the boomers that we still have are used to coming to the office 5 days a week because that was the expectation and that was the way forward. So now what we're seeing is an inherent tension in the workplace, right? Between now we have five generations in the workplace that are still currently working with very different expectations and, frankly, of desires of what they want out of work, right? And what they're doing. In fact, I was just reading this morning, there was an article that came out that said Gen Z employees are just as unhappy working as they are unemployed, which is a staggering statistic. And that's because their expectation of what work should be is very different. They don't believe necessarily in achievement in and of itself, it's achievement to a certain outcome. Whereas the rest of us were taught that we just need to excel and that good things and rewards will come to us. It's a very different approach now that we're seeing. And then when it comes to respect, it really is about being open and transparent about the norms within your organization, the processes, and that's where the transparency and the communication that the younger generations are looking for in line with what the older generations are used to. And so I think it is about constantly thinking about how we are structuring our programs, how we're structuring our processes, and how we're communicating that because expectations, particularly now, I think need to be much more clearer than probably they ever have been. And that's really the shift that we're seeing more than anything.
Yeah, and you're hitting on a topic that maybe we'll do part two next year with
Yes, I
you,
would
which
love
is
to.
such a rich one around your industry
Oh,
and this
yes.
transparency issue, right?
Yes.
How thank you for staying within your org, but in
Yeah.
terms of how the implications of that
Mhm.
with how you guide your clients and
Yeah,
how they can
absolutely.
navigate all of this. All right. Well, my friend, we're
Yeah.
going to run out of time.
Oh my
Share
gosh, that
your
went so
top
fast.
tips. I know it does go so fast. These are really quick 15, 20-minute chats. But
Yes.
actually, no, before we get to your tips, yeah,
Yeah.
anything that you've run into that's like a roadblock to respect and how you navigated that, right? When
I
it
think I
isn't,
think that, yeah, no, and it's a really good question. I wouldn't call it roadblocks, but I think more than anything is really establishing expectations, right? I think when people understand what the expectations are of your organization, your culture, your values, and you communicate that clearly, it creates a standard for which you expect your employees and your leaders to operate within, right? These are the guardrails to say, we expect that you will be kind, that you will be curious, that you will be collaborative, that and once you land those expectations, it's very easy for people to rise to the occasion. I think the challenge always is that we can't live in a space where it comes to culture, which is a living, breathing, organic thing, where we just expect people to know what is expected of them. We have to be clear, we have to be transparent, we have to be open, and more importantly, we have to hold people accountable, right, for actually performing in this way, right? So I wouldn't necessarily call it a hurdle, but more so it's establishing the expectations that's really required for you to have the kind of culture and the kind of workplace environment that people want to work in, they feel comfortable, and more importantly, from a business perspective, that they actually get what they need, what the business gets what it needs to be successful from its employees. So I think it's really thinking about that question in a way of how do you ensure that you get to what you're trying to drive as an outcome.
Yeah, no, excellent. And I'm hearing this across all levels. So you're
Sure.
holding the feet to the ground with executives around that
Yes.
accountability to model the
Mhm.
way.
All the
Fantastic.
way, all levels. Everyone has a role to play, as we say.
That's right. All right,
Mhm.
my friend. So let's get to those top tips. What can
Yes.
our listeners take away as ways to practice that more respect in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first tip is I would say be open, right? Everyone's experience is not the same. I think that's the magic of our workplaces now. People come from different environments, different backgrounds, different experiences. And what you're trying to do is be open to all of those experiences because there's some value to be gained in all of that. So my first piece of advice is for us to remain open and keep an open mindset and to be willing to be flexible, right, on those experiences, which is one. Two, which I just said, which I think is supremely important, you have to set expectations of the kinds of behaviors that will and will not be celebrated, tolerated, and or considered to be unacceptable. I think part of driving respect in the workplace is establishing those guidelines for people to follow. And I would say my third tip around respect is that I think it's something that you have to be intentional about. I think you have to engage people in the intentional actions around respect. Like, what does it look like, right? What does it feel like? Is it a kindness? Is it a courtesy? Is it a willingness to collaborate and have each other's back? Is it always being curious and asking the right questions? I think it's very important when you think about respect and creating that in the workplace that you make it intentional and you make it actionable and you make it something that people can embody as a part of their day to day. And it's not something that you only reserve for certain meetings or certain interactions, but it's almost who you are all times during the day. And I think that that's something that I encourage people to continue to drive and continue to think about how to make that real.
Brilliant, brilliant. That's it. That's the heart of it is make it real, make it actionable,
Mhm.
live it, right? So
Yes, live
thank you
it.
so much. Thank you, thank you,
Yeah.
thank you, my friend. I can't wait to put this out there to the world.
Yes, thank you, Bobby. It's so nice seeing you, and we will stay in touch and hopefully see you next year.
Absolutely.